just when I was about to write She-Hulk off as a show that wasn't for me, it delivers this episode. Hello everybody, I'm here to review the latest episode of She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, this time Season 1, Episode 7, The Retreat. And not to rhyme this one, but this episode was truly, honestly, a treat. If you haven't been watching my reviews of this show for the past few weeks, there's been a certain negativity, or at the very least sort of like, meh, maybe this show really isn't for me feeling that I've been having about She-Hulk for the most part. And this episode isn't going to radically change my view on the entire series so far, but this, quite frankly, I think was the show's best episode, because it didn't feel shallow like a lot of the past few episodes of She-Hulk have felt. The show's mainly just had this, like, we're just gonna do this superficial, like, girl boss sort of thing, or, like, these, like, quick little gags that don't really get to the heart of her character in any, like, real deep, nuanced way, and just didn't really also feel like it was fully taking full advantage of what this show can do with, like, a lawyer character in the MCU, or a She-Hulk or Hulk-like character. And while this episode doesn't take advantage of the lawyer stuff at all, which is, something that kind of saddens me as a fan of shows like Boston Legal from when I was a kid, and I always love lawyer shows. But what this episode did do was deliver a really just earnestly sweet episode that dug deep into Jen as a character in ways that not only I think felt truthful to her character, but just personally for me, I really actually related to. And I think that's really been my biggest struggle with this series so far, in that I just haven't really been relating to Jen in a way that I felt like I really could with a character like this. I mean, being a woman, struggling with, like, being a woman in a field that's, like, dominated typically by men. I mean, I'm doing reviews on YouTube. I understand that feeling as a trans woman, as a woman in this space. But I just really, and other things too, like identity and who do people get to see, that hits me as, like, a queer person, a trans person. So, like, there's so much that this character really could do, and I haven't really felt that. And in this one, it's like, oh, this actually feels like a real character dealing with these problems and these struggles, and not in a sort of, like, girl boss, hey, yeah, raw feminism sort of way, but actually like a meaningful way. And I honestly just thought it was super sweet. Digging into all of it, I kind of want to just go through it. I loved the opening sequence where we get to see Jen sort of actually feeling valued by going on dates with Josh. And I thought it was filmed so wonderfully. Like, it's nothing, like, revelatory. Like, I've seen all of this, like, cinematography before, but it was just very well done, and I felt it, and I could see Jen just getting more and more sort of wrapped up in this guy and feeling that, which really helps pay off later on the episode. You know, I would have rather, Josh had been a character that showed up a little bit more than just the episode prior, but if you're just gonna sort of speed run this visualization really just hit home exactly what I think this episode needed it to get to the later emotional catharsis for the character. Another thing too, I liked seeing that Jen was looking herself up on Intelligentsia, the, like, hate Kiwi Farms 4chan-esque website that we learned about last episode, which I 100% knew. Spoiler for the end of the episode, I was like, Josh is totally working for that site, because I kind of figured from last episode. But just as on a personal note, I'm going to just talk a little bit about how I related to this episode, because I personally related a lot to this episode in my own unique way, and I'm sure many other people did. But as someone who is, somewhat, like, I'm not famous, but I'm a decently sized YouTuber, trans YouTuber, and I'll be honest, there's been sites that have made hate forums about me. No, not on the level of, like, big names or whatever, but they exist, and I've been aware of them, and there's a certain morbid curiosity that you get when that thing exists. It's awful and horrible, and definitely didn't help my mental health, and was honestly very, very scary. But and there's still some that do exist, though there's one that doesn't exist anymore, if that helps give a hint to where it was. But you do have a curiosity about it, and you kind of have to just kind of, like, shove it off to the side. So I felt Jen in that moment And it sort of like started getting me primed to hear what was going on later, where we get her going up to Emil Blonsky's sort of ranch that he has. And he has a very big estate as a character, like something I wouldn't have expected, like a military dude that we got to see in the first Incredible Hulk movie to have. There's been enough, like been a recent MCU-ifying of his character that does not ring true necessarily to his character in the Incredible Hulk, but we're setting that aside at this point. But I just loved him just sort of having this like therapy session on his estate with like all these like D-list superheroes, and I loved all of them, to be quite frank with you. The Matador guy, the man bear. Oh, sorry, he's not a Matador. El Lugu. I'm not gonna just be the whitest person and mispronounce his name. But we also had Man Bull, I think, and also Porcupine and a few others. They were all very adorable and like sweet, and that's what I loved about this episode. Like all of those characters just felt earnest and sweet and adorable. All the actors played them so well. They were just well written. Even Emil Blonsky like felt like I was worried that he would be like, oh, he actually has something evil and nefarious going on, and maybe he does, but he honestly actually did feel like he cared. And I loved that. I don't know, as someone who just loves earnest stuff like Star Trek and Star Trek Lower Decks specifically, where it's always like the earnest, kind thing that wins the day, I really liked this just earnest kindness between this group. And it was actually like a good therapy session. And they really pushed her to like come forward. And when she started talking about like, hey, I don't really feel valued as Jen. And this guy gave me that. But I have to be She-Hulk, and I wonder if like people only like She-Hulk and not Jen, because Jen's amazing. And for my own self, like I'm sure many people can relate to this in many different ways. How I relate to it in two different ways is, one, as a trans person. This is something that I've gotten over, but I remember when I was first coming out as trans, I had a lot of kind of friends who were transphobic and have since cut out of my life. But I had a friend who literally told me like, I miss who you were before you transitioned. I like the boy version of you better. And yeah, it just made me feel absolutely awful. And so I connect on that level. But I think a way that like more specifically, and I relate to now with Jen, is this idea like as a YouTuber. Again, I'm not like famous, but there are people that watch my content and get to know me. I mean, you are right now. But this is like a version of myself that is different from like the everyday me. It's not radically different, but it is a little bit more heightened, fun, over the top. You get to see me on my best days, not my worst, not my like where I'm wearing pajamas and walking down to the store with my hair all frazzled and just like, I'm gonna get a scone for breakfast and a coffee, like that. You don't get to see that. And so I always am like, oh, do the people like that version of me and not the version of me that just exists every day? You get that feeling sometimes. And I really I related to her being open about that. And the scene that where it was depicted was just, you really felt it with her as a character. Like, do people just value me as She-Hulk and not Jen? And how this guy hurt me by ghosting me right at that moment, where I felt like he was really valuing me for who I was. And I thought it was like a healthy way to depict that. It was a healthy relationship to sex too. There was a couple jokes about it, but like there was no like, oh, you had sex with a girl sort of thing. Like, no, it was a healthy relationship to all of that. And I thought it was just a really sweet moment where they just said like, we value you for you. It honestly, I'm getting kind of teary thinking about it. Like, it was just, the characters just were so kind, and I loved that. It really hit me. And I just thought it was just nice to see people valuing her and Jen actually getting that moment. And I laughed a few times too. There's some great jokes throughout the episode that I haven't really touched upon, like the bit where like she's checking her phone and then like the music is playing, like the big MCU music, and then it like cuts to her singing in the car as she's driving up to Emil Blonsky's place. That was funny. There was some good laughs. It wasn't like the funniest thing I've ever seen, but between the like gags that worked and the emotional earnestness, I thought was wonderful. And the bit at the end, Josh turning out to be working for Intelligentsia, figure that, again, we've kind of figured that. And so I really liked this episode. Again, it's not radically shifting my entire thought of the series. I do have a lot of problems with it, but this is definitely the best one by far. And I hope that, like, if the series continues in the next 2 episodes or into new seasons, that this is the level of earnestness that I think that this show should maintain, because I think this worked, and what they've been doing for the most part hasn't been awful. as some people on this site will tell you. But it's not been fantastic. It's been shallow, I think is the best way to put it. Not bad, but shallow. This felt like it actually had depth, and I really enjoyed that. The only comment really, the only real big negative that I could say about this episode was no Daredevil. They teased him, and they kept teasing him in trailers and in the like press around the show, and we only have 2 more episodes left of the season, and he's not here. So, you know, I'd rather this than like the shallow, like, oh, we get a Daredevil cameo. Like, this episode is better than Daredevil being in it, for sure. But the nerd in me is like, I kind of want my Daredevil. So don't tease him if you're not going to deliver him. I'm sure we'll get him either next episode or the episode after. Yeah. This was great. And the previously on section also was great too. That was fun. Yeah, this was a wonderful, sweet episode that I really adored, and like managed to save She-Hulk from the sort of negativity that I've been feeling about it, or at least neutrality that I've been feeling about it over the past few weeks. So yeah, that's my thoughts. I'd love to hear all your thoughts down in the comments below. But beyond all of that, thank you so much for watching, my friends. And as always, live long and prosper. Like, I feel very chill. I feel so chill after watching this episode. It's great. I love it.